Everyone, thank you for watching 10 Points to Ponder. Before we get into the topic at hand today, I just want to give a brief note of thanks for those who have been supporting and watching this content. I'm going to try to switch it up a little bit and focus a little bit more on current events and just go straight through the 10 points. Let me know if you like this format, if you like the old format. Also, make sure that you give a like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos. I really think that it's important, especially in our time, that we're equipped to engage the culture in whatever is going on. And so for today's topic, I want to talk about Gina Carano. Gina Carano is an actress that was in a very popular television show called The Mandalorian. And Gina Carano has been canceled right now. She was canceled because she made the following statement. She said, "Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views?" Hi, my name is Ali Schwaga, and this is 10 Points to Ponder, where we like to talk about all the things that get you canceled: race, politics, Jesus, and manhood. Today, I want to talk about race, and specifically what seems to be a war against whiteness. Here's 10 Points to Ponder. Point 1. The war against whiteness wants to bring shame. It wants you to look at how you're born, look at perhaps the advantages that you might have, that we all have in life, and be ashamed of having those things. And it only works towards conservatives and white people. The strange thing about it is that the rest of the culture is being told to be proud. Culture right now is under a false philosophy that separates the body and self. It's called body-self dualism, which is the idea that who I am biologically, how God basically made me physically, is not really the real me. The real me is however I choose to represent myself, even outside of reality. So the first leg of the attack against whiteness right now is shame. Point 2, fear. Specifically, fear of being canceled. They want to institute a reign of terror, the same sort of reign of terror that Gina Carano speaks about in her post. She said that the only reason that the Nazi soldiers could come and start picking people off was because society and culture had so marginalized people that to do anything against them would be considered a good deed. Think about what we've been told about people that don't want to wear masks. They're killing people. They're killing Granny. They're not worthy of human dignity or respect. Think of the charge of racism and how it's being weaponized and leveled against people. It's being leveled in such a way that now we're to think that even a person who is a racist is not worthy of human dignity, that to kill or exterminate someone who is a racist is actually a good thing and a moral thing. So Gina got canceled, which is an example of the very thing that she's talking about. Point 3, dehumanization. When we start saying that whiteness is oppressive and every white person is an oppressor with certain proclivities that make them more willing to do evil than others, which is actually what's being taught in textbooks, and that's what people gather from it, then you're another species. You're another type of person. You're less than human. Thus, whatever is done to you because you're evil, you're the oppressor, is completely legal and okay. Point 4, stereotyping. Stereotyping it's an old-fashioned word that means that you create a pattern based upon one thing that you've seen. And if you really want to avoid being stereotyped, just read the following apology, change it for your industry, and make sure that you cry as you do it. The industry is flawed. It sets men, especially white men, up for success. It's designed this way. As a man in a privileged position, I have to be vocal about this. Because of my ignorance, I didn't recognize it for all it was while it was happening in my own life. I do not want to ever benefit from others being pulled down again. I've not been perfect in navigating all this throughout my career. I know this apology is a first step, and it doesn't absolve the past. I want to take accountability for my own missteps in all of this, as well as being part of a world that uplifts and supports. I care deeply about the well-being of the people I love and have loved. I can do better, and I will do better. Cry me a river, oh, cry me a river, oh, cry me a river, oh, cry me a river, cry me, oh, cry me a river. Point 5, this war against whiteness is also decidedly anti-privilege. It's only now that we look at people having certain advantages and privileges to be a negative thing and assume negative intent towards the way that they received that privilege. It used to be called the American dream. It used to be that you wanted to work hard and wanted to achieve something or grow something or have enough money that you could put your kids through college so that they would have a better life and be able to step ahead of you in life. You wanted to give of yourself so that you could give privileges to others. Now we look at privileges and immediately assume that the person that received the privileges didn't work for the privileges. We, as Christians, have another word for that. It's called grace. When I read my Bible, I'm told that I have every spiritual blessing in the heavenlies at my disposal. Should I be ashamed of that? Should I check that privilege of being able to call on my Heavenly Father at any time when I'm in need? Of knowing that I have a perspective that this world is not my home? Therefore, I don't have to be all worked up like everybody else, which is a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to keep a cool head in these days. And so all this rhetoric about privileges is actually rhetoric that contradicts the idea of the grace of God and contradicts the American value of trying to make a better life for your family and your children. Point 6, the war against whiteness wants white people to dissociate as their main goal. There's a great book called White Guilt by Shelby Steele, and I'll do another video in which I go point by point through that book because it's so incisive and so speaks about the days that we live in right now. But in that book, he says that the primary goal of a good white person be to dissociate from not racism, but the charge of racism. So if somebody labels something as racist, such as equality in a job, meritocracy, those things are now labeled racist. Therefore, your job as a white person, if you're going to be good in this society, is to dissociate from that, which means that you diminish yourself and your abilities so that you can have equity for someone, even if that person isn't deserving of it. Point 7, self-censorship. How is it right now when we're talking about race that a black person or a person of color actually has more freedom of speech than a white person? This self-silencing is how Marxism is going to be instituted. Support of American values is now support of whiteness and white supremacy. It's going to be all the more important to stand up and use your voice and don't allow your country to fall without speaking into how it's being governed. Point 8, the war on whiteness supports mediocrity. Why do I say that? Am I saying that black people are inferior and do inferior work and aren't going to be as successful? No. What I'm saying is that we need to have a colorblind system of determining. We're committing what's called the apex fallacy, which is that we look at the very top of something and that's what we want to compare and say, hey, that's not fair. For instance, CEOs, we look at CEOs and we say, well, all the CEOs end up being men. But what we don't ask is, how many men are CEOs anyway? What percentage of men are CEOs? The same thing, when we look at the homeless population and they're disproportionately male and white males, we don't say, hey, we need more equity in the homeless population. Let's get more mixed races in that population. Or maybe let's look at the people that abuse opiates. Let's get some equity in the opiate abusers. We don't do that. Or let's get more Asians in the NBA. Let's do that. Hey, our distribution is all wrong with all these 6'8" black people that happen to be in the NBA. Can we get some white guys that are about 5'11"? That's a greater percentage of the population than the 7% of black men in the population that make up 72% of NBA players. We're always looking at the apex when really we need to understand that God has created us and he's made us different and he's given all of us different privileges and advantages. And it's our job to be good and faithful servants and use the talents that he's given us to greatest effect for his glory. Can you imagine if the Navy SEALs were concerned about race when it came to who gets into that elite fighting force? Or the military in general? That would be a crisis, because now we're talking about competence that is specifically related to life and death issues. And here in this country, when it comes to our economy, we want the most talented people because we know that when the talented people succeed, that we all get to benefit. And when you essentially go to war against one segment of the population, then you're stifling and artificially killing innovation. You're supporting mediocrity. Point 9, the war against whiteness wants us to be collective in thought and behavior. The The war against whiteness is the war against individuality. That's one of the things that was called whiteness and is part of white supremacy. The idea that someone would go out on their own and start their own business and do their own thing rather than relying on the government. This push towards collectivism is exactly why COVID lockdowns and racial justice protests have been weaponized against the middle class. Marxism does not work once you have a segment of the population that can prove that through hard work, dedication, and innovation that capitalism is working. Point 10. The war on whiteness is the acceptance of tyranny. How do I make that leap? John Locke would define tyranny as the exercise of power beyond what is right. And so what rights did Locke think that we were supposed to have? We were supposed to have the rights to life, liberty, and property. Let's take these three. Life. If I have the right to life, then why should I be ashamed of how God made me and how I've been born? If I have a right to liberty, then why is it that I must silence myself or else I end up losing my job? If I have a right to property, then why can't I speak up when people are going through our streets, burning and looting the things that through my taxes are our property? This war against whiteness is an attempt to guilt you into accepting the exercise of authority beyond what is right. I really do believe that there is a war going on against whiteness. And who is imposing the war? Who's starting the war? White liberals. The reason they want to demonize whiteness so much is so that anything that they do against you is morally justifiable, because just like Trump, you are an existential threat. It's a shadow war. Just like that article, the shadow campaign. There's a shadow war that's going on, and it's being fought in the spirit, but it's also being fought in the streets. If we silence ourselves, if people don't speak up and start becoming immune to the charge of racism because you know who you are in your heart of hearts, then I fear that we're going to lose this country. Those are my thoughts. What do you think? Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. My name is Ali Schwaga, and this has been 10 Points to Ponder.